In this lesson, we'll create the material for the character's eyes. So we've got the texture pretty much built for the rest of the character, but we don't have any detail created for the eyes yet. So let's concentrate on that area. So just so we can see what we're doing a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the visibility of our sculpt, and we'll just concentrate here on the eyes. Now we already have a material associated with the eyes. If I double click on that, I can bring up the material editor, and I can go ahead and rename that if I want to. So I'll just call this eye material. And the channel that we really want to focus on is the color. And so we've got the color selected here. Right now we're just using a flat black color. And what we want to do is use some sort of an image. Now we're not going to be using a painted image. We're actually going to be using a procedural image that's created in Cinema 4D. So I want to have a couple of different variations that are combined together. So I'm going to go under texture, a little arrow right next to that. And we're going to come in all the way down here, a few sections down on this layer. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer in here. Let's jump in the layer. And under the layers, I want to actually start adding some layers in here. So I'm going to go ahead, go to shader, and add a gradient as one element of the layer. So you can see how the gradient is traveling across the surface of this sphere. So it's going from this sort of seam right here all the way around, and you can see how that relates to the 2D image with the black on one side and the white on the other side. So what we want to do is go ahead and go into our gradient. So we'll click on the gradient itself, and here you can choose what type of gradient you want to actually use. So right now it's set to a 2D gradient along the U direction. If we set it to a 2D gradient along the V direction, you can see that it is sort of over here on the side, it's kind of darker. Let's switch that up by dragging the black and the white and changing spots. Okay, so it's still very, very soft. So we want to go ahead and kind of sharpen that up. So we can go ahead and drag that down. And I want it to be a little bit wider, so I'll go ahead and drag this black out a little bit more. So something like that. I want to keep the pupil as black, but I want to replace this white with another color. So I'll go ahead and click on the little box here, and I'm going to choose kind of a red with maybe a little bit of orange. So maybe something like that. Your color can be a little bit different if you want, but I'm going to choose something like that. And I want to add another color right on the edge between the black and the red. So go ahead and click to add a new color. Double click on that, and I'm going to make that sort of a lighter orangey kind of a color. So create something like that. Now your colors can be different, but you can kind of see how that gradient is, how the gradient here creates this texture. So we've got red up to this strip of orange, up to this strip of black, and then how that is actually applied onto our sphere using the 2D going along the V direction. Okay. Now you can also add a little bit of turbulence, so you can kind of see how that tweaks that line right there. If I turn that off, you can see it's just a straight line, but if I increase the turbulence, it's just got a little bit of a wave in it. Okay, so we've got our gradient set in our color. So now what we need to do is I want to add a little bit of variation on here. And so what I can do is start to add other elements into our layer. So if I go into shader, there are different types of elements that I can go into. I can go down to surfaces and get like a marble. And that gives you this sort of a pattern. And you can see in this layer how that's starting to stack up. So we've got the gradient on the bottom. We've got this marble up on the top. Now all we're seeing right now is the marble, and that's because it is on top. Here you'll find your blend modes and your visibility for your actual layer. So if you wanted to just take the visibility of that down, you can start to see the gradient underneath. We can also just change the blend mode itself, so we can change that to multiply. And there you can see that we sort of get that veiny type of a look over the top of this procedural color that we've added using a gradient. If you want to change any of the settings of the marble, you can go ahead and click on that, and then it will allow you to change, for instance, the frequency, and you can go ahead and just dial those in if you want. You can decrease the turbulence to make different looks. You can also add colors in here or move colors around, darken up the dark lines, lighten up the light areas. Okay, so you have a lot of control over what it is, the look that you're trying to get. Okay, now we're using marble here, but you can, in your layer, start to combine several different types of shaders in there. And if you wanted to take the visibility of that down with the multiply on, you could do that as well. Okay, let's go ahead under the specular, and I need to make this a little bit more shiny. So right now it's got a very broad speck, and we want it to be a little bit more shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and take the width of that specular highlight down, and let's increase the height a little bit. So it's just a little bit more, has a little bit more of a shiny type of a look. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So we've got our changes made. Now because the eyes are within our null and then those are within the symmetry, those texture or that material has been mirrored over to the other side so that all of the eyes have been done at once. Let's go ahead and turn back on our main creature. And then if we need to, we can come in here, go to rotate, and we can kind of rotate that eye out a little bit. And do the same thing up here because this is mirrored. It's going to happen simultaneously over on the other side. Okay, maybe this one, if we don't want them looking in the same direction, it can be kind of a offsetting or off-putting look, kind of create something a little bit more unusual. If one of them's looking maybe in a different direction, it could be kind of cool. So there we've got a material for our eye. Now if you see that maybe the pupil is a little bit too large, it's easy to really go in and fix that. We can just go into our color, jump back into our layer and into our gradient, and the size of the pupil is defined by this right here, this black area. So if you want a larger pupil, increase that size. If you want a smaller pupil, you can decrease that size and drag that orange down a little bit closer, and you can see how that pupil gets a bit smaller. Okay, which maybe looks a little bit better. All right, so now that we've got the eye textured, the next thing that we want to start to do is to tweak the texture, the overall texture of our creature a little bit. Maybe add a little bit more variation to some of the softer tissues. Maybe tweak the texture for the abdomen a little bit. Add some texture to that. So we'll go ahead and start to finish up our color texture for the creature in the next lesson.